For many, the entire appeal of the horror genre is that it offers a pulse-spiking thrill ride that can be experienced in total safety and comfort without the fear of any actual real-world horror. But sometimes the horror we witness on the screen manages to find a way to pervade into reality, ensuring that it's no longer a mere escapist illusion, but something totally tangible. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and here are 9 horror movies that got too real as you watched. Number 9, The Exorcist sparks an epidemic of fainting, vomiting, and panic attacks. Though some younger horror fans might see William Friedkin's masterful The Exorcist as a bit tame by contemporary standards, there's no denying the thunderous impact the movie had with audiences of its era. During the week of the film's release in 1973, there were widespread reports of audiences reacting viscerally to it, whether fainting or vomiting, to the extent that some outlets even dubbed the phenomenon an epidemic. If there's any doubt at all, news footage literally shows people fainting and being left visibly hysterical by the movie, enough that some cinemas hired paramedics around the clock, plumbers were kept on site to unclog puke-filled bathrooms, and Exorcist-branded bath bags were handed out at some locations. Psychiatric journal entries were even written about the neurosis induced by the film. Curiously though, the reactions weren't purely due to the intense exorcism sequences. Many appeared to respond to the film's extremely realistic depiction of a cerebral angiography being performed upon Reagan. Number 8, Terrifier 2 viewers need an ambulance. The marketing team behind hit horror sequel Terrifier 2 wanted everyone to know that it was even gnarlier and nastier than the original Gorefest, and they certainly got some easy help from early moviegoers. Within days of Terrifier 2's release, there were numerous reports of separate incidents where viewers fainted or vomited due to the film's extreme violence, with an ambulance even having to be called on at least one occasion. These reports went viral online and almost certainly contributed to the film's buzzy word-of-mouth success, where it went on to gross $15.7 million globally against a mere $250,000 budget. As thrilled as writer-director Damien Leone was by the film's success, he did illustrate his concerns about audience members getting hurt, saying, quote, "Listen, I would have loved to have a couple of walkouts. I think that's sort of a badge of honor because it's an intense movie. I don't want people fainting, getting hurt during the movie. But it's surreal. Here's the thing, it's called Terrifier 2. You should probably see Terrifier 1 before you jump into this one. If you see Terrifier 1, you'd know what you're getting into." And of course, Terrifier 3 predictably led to a similar spate of headlines, with attendees once again being traumatized by the nauseating violence that Leone unleashed upon them. Number 7, Memories of Murder suspects you of being the killer. Bong Joon-ho's brilliant horror-adjacent thriller Memories of Murder revolves around a detective who investigates a series of murders in 1980s South Korea. The crime isn't ever solved, however, and in the film's 2003 epilogue, the detective continues to be haunted by his inability to catch the killer. He returns to the area where the murderer's first victim was discovered, and a young girl mentions that she recently saw a man reminiscing about doing something there years earlier. When he asks what this person looked like, the girl says, "plain and ordinary," giving him little to go on. At this moment, he then turns and stares directly at the audience. A callback to earlier in the film where he maintains eye contact with suspects in order to discern whether they're lying. And so he effectively interrogates every single person watching the movie with his eyes. This is all the more eerie given that the real-life killer wasn't caught at the time and only brought to justice in 2019, where he admitted that he had in fact seen the film. Number 6, audiences think the Blair Witch Project is real. As silly as it might sound to younger horror fans, there were a great many people who believed that the Blair Witch Project was real leading up to its 1999 release. That we really were watching footage recovered from the woods in Burkittsville, Maryland, that belonged to 3 missing filmmakers. This worked for a few reasons. The film itself doesn't show anything explicitly supernatural. The filmmakers took full advantage of the internet to market the film virally, and the 3 central cast members, Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard, were forbidden from making public appearances for a year after the movie's release. And so it was easy to believe that the trio were indeed missing, presumed dead, as their IMDb stated at the time. And we were seeing what might be the final video testament of 3 doomed film students. Ultimately, of course, it was just a perfect storm of the movie's envelope-pushing found footage style and canny marketing in a less media-savvy era of the internet. Number 5. Dracula makes women faint. Almost a full century before some of the newer movies on this list, Todd Browning's 1931 Dracula was an early example of the horror genre's ability to affect audience members on a deeply primal level. Case in point, the film, which of course revolves around a vampire preying primarily upon a young woman, reportedly left female audience members in particular so distraught that they fainted and had to be carried out of the cinema. Even accepting the somewhat apocryphal nature of these reports and the extreme unlikelihood that the film only affected women, it is nevertheless fitting that a movie about a force of nature which stalks its victims had a real paralytic effect on viewers almost a full century ago, to the extent that they couldn't even exit the cinema under their own power. Universal was quick to emphasize such reports in their marketing, resulting in the film becoming the studio's most profitable release of 1931. Number 4. Host is shot and released during COVID lockdown. By April 2020, roughly half of the world's population was in some form of lockdown, in an attempt to curb the COVID-19 pandemic. And though the last 5 years have seen numerous films released that explored the lockdown experience, none proved quite so timely as Host. Host was a horror film written and directed by 28-year-old filmmaker Rob Savage, a movie set entirely on a computer screen during the pandemic as a group of friends accidentally summon a demon during an online Zoom seance. The film was incredibly produced entirely in lockdown in a span of just 12 weeks. Savage remotely directing the cast and crew, who due to lockdown restrictions had to manage their own cameras, makeup, special effects and sound. And given that Host was released on streaming service Shudder by July 2020, audiences were able to watch the film while themselves likely still in some form of lockdown, ensuring a perversely immersive quality, as though we ourselves were part of the live stream while also ordered to remain in our homes. Host is still an effective and well-crafted horror film when watched today, but the level of realness it achieved for those watching it on original release will hopefully never be replicated. Number 3. VHS gives an audience member seizures. Not unlike the Blair Witch Project, the VHS franchise thrives on the verisimilitude of its found footage aesthetic, placing the audience directly in the action in the most unnervingly intimate way possible. And right from the film's premiere at the 2012 Sundance Film Festival, the filmmakers clearly knew they had something special on their hands, as reports emerged that 2 audience members had to be treated by paramedics due to an adverse reaction to the movie's violence. According to one of the film's writers, Simon Barrett, one cinemagoer fled the screen and apparently suffered a seizure in the cinema lobby, while his girlfriend ended up vomiting. Though this obviously sounds a lot like PR fluff for a new horror movie following its premiere, producer Roxanne Benjamin seemed genuinely concerned about the incident, calling it, quote, scary and not fun. But also noting that the 2 attendees were ultimately okay and even wanted to return to finish watching the movie. Number 2. A ceiling collapses during a screening of Final Destination Bloodlines. Though the recent Final Destination Bloodlines ditched the 3D gimmickry of the previous 2 films, one moviegoer had an incredibly close call when watching the sequel at the cinema. As was reported worldwide, on May 19th of this year, mere days after Bloodlines hit cinemas, the roof of a cinema in Buenos Aires partially collapsed during a screening of the movie, with debris falling on 29-year-old Fiamma Villaverde. The debris hit Villaverde's shoulder, back, knee and ankle, only barely missing her head and averting a potentially far more disastrous scenario. While photos circulated online from the incident were later revealed to be fake, the ceiling collapse has itself been verified by local Argentine press. It's certainly an ironic turn of events considering the Final Destination series' focus on freak accidents, and especially given that the 4th film, The Final Destination, even featured the destruction of a cinema in its climax. Thankfully, in this case though, the victim made it out in one piece. Number 1. House on Haunted Hill flies a skeleton over the audience. Hollywood is always looking for ways to spruce up the movie-going experience and make it more immersive for audiences, though these gimmicks also have a tendency to be short-lived. Case in point, we have the original 1959 Vincent Price starring House on Haunted Hill, which features a late film sequence where a skeleton emerges from a vat of acid. And so, in his infinite wisdom, director William Castle devised a new feature called Emergo, whereby he invited cinema managers to rig up a skeleton to the screen, which would then be levitated over the audience with a series of pulleys. As daft as it sounds, Emergo did apparently work on the audiences of the era, helping drive House on Haunted Hill to commercial success, grossing more than 12-fold its budget at the box office. However, Emergo didn't become the new hotness in Hollywood, probably due to the logistics involved in rigging up cinemas and the personnel needed to actually operate the pulleys. That said, there have been periodic screenings of the film which have brought the Emergo gimmick back, to the amusement of modern audiences, of course.